All right, this is David.
This is Donald.
And this is the Double D movie review. And we just got done finishing watching the 2023 biographical, based on a true story, film about the Von Erich Wrestling Family, the Iron Claw. Before we discuss our point of view, we just listened to Jim Cornette from his podcast on his point of view, and I thought he had a great perspective. And the one key thing that Jim Cornette was trying to get over is he kept repeating that these actors don't know how to that a lot of what was scripted or what the wrestlers were saying, or the actors were saying, is what they were saying is not what wrestlers would say. They did not portray themselves as wrestlers because wrestling is so original that only wrestlers can be original. Their characters and how they talk, how they act, how they wrestle are original. Actors have to go based on who trained them or watching a video. So there's no way of them to be original. So they have to go what scripted director, producer, writer have to tell them what to say, or since there's only one surviving brother. And the thing is, he, according to Kevin Von Erich, was never consulted. He informed that the movie was being produced. I think his son, Marshall, was kind of a consultant. His daughter, I think it was Carrie's daughter, Holly, if not mistaken. The way I read about this is she was on set and saw the costumes that the actors were wearing for the wrestlers, and they were spot on. And Jim Cornette said that they kind of rebuilt the Dallas Sportatorium with the famous arena for the Von Erichs. The two things the key things that I saw that were very positive were a near spot on. Excuse me, because I wrote up a lot of names and a lot of information about that.
Yeah.
That Holt McCallie, if I don't pronounce his name, Fritz, he was 80% nearly spot on. The one actor I thought was spot on perfect, based on videos on maybe YouTube or videos I've seen of the Von Erichs, was Harris Dickinson as David. Because he died in 1984, and Jim Cornette said, I never got to meet David. I thought he was spot on. From one of the videos I saw of David, I thought he was, by look and by talk, his performance was spot on perfect. Better than the other brothers.
Now, the obvious difference is the one where I guess everyone agreed is the difference between Kerry and Kevin Von Erich.
Now, Jeremy Allen White and Zac Efron. The key thing is
the joke is about the neck down from the neck up.
Yes. Explain what your point of view.
Okay. Basically, for Zac Efron, from the neck up, he did look like Kevin Von Erich.
Right.
But from the neck down,
he looked like Ultimate Warrior.
He looked like a combo between Ultimate Warrior and Kerry Von Erich. Where Kerry Von Erich was the exact opposite.
Jeremy Allen White, head up was Kerry.
Like but from the neck down, he looked like
he was too short, just like the one who portrayed Bruiser Brody. We can't pronounce his name. Kazi Lewis. Sarah, I'm sorry we can't pronounce his name. I'm sorry to the actor, we can't pronounce his name. Bruiser Brody, he was the same height as the Von Erich boys.
And he's not.
And Bruiser Brody's he's a big man. Big. And
for reference point in the future, try to see videos of Bruiser Brody next to Lex Luger, and you'll see the difference in size.
Now, the one key thing, when I immediately looked up about who was portraying the boys, was looking all the actors' names. The only one I did miss was the mother, Doris. Was actress Maura Tierney, who is more well known for many years as the actress Abigail Lockhart on the show ER on NBC. And when I noticed her as the mother, that's Maura Tierney. That's Abby. I didn't know it because I was more focused on who was doing the Von Erich boys, not the mother. Wow, I never knew she was even selected. Okay, there's only one old photo of Doris I've ever seen, so I never saw her young. So it's just what we have to consider what her portrayal of Doris Von Erich was.
Now, part of the critique that both you and especially Cornette had was the actors trying to act like the wrestlers. They were trying to give off more of a shoot aspect, or almost like a fan perspective of how wrestlers would talk to each other in private, versus actually more of a business-oriented way of, okay, these are what I'm going to do move-wise, these are moves you're going to do, and they just do their own choreography of how matches go. But in the movie, the way they did it, they were making it sound like it was more realistic and shoot than it really was in real life. So I understood where both Cornette and you had issues with them sounding off like that because it just didn't fit the reality of it.
One of my key issues has nothing to do with the actors, and I first wanted to start it off with was I didn't tell my brother what the biggest point of view. I think the biggest error was this movie was done way too late in time period. When I mean, released in 2023. Now, the Von Erichs were inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2009.
Correct.
What modern fan would know who the Von Erichs are now? There's the big issue. If you're putting a movie theater, if you're putting even for a TV movie,
and that might
only quote unquote old school fans would know who the Von Erichs were.
And that might have been what one of the original trends of the movie was, to try and get people re-familiar with who these individuals were. It could be. I don't know. I'm just speculating.
True, but you could see what the biggest error I thought of is this movie is decades too late. It was done way too.
Or it could simply be with them mostly no longer being here. You couldn't get any of them to really disagree with it, other than what you mentioned earlier about Kevin Von Erich.
Because there's so much tragedy about the brothers, what happened to each brother. I think that's the sole reason it's such a tragic situation of any family member, and Kevin being the sole surviving brother, family member. It would have made a great movie. They didn't have no production value.
No, but
there's no money behind this film.
But that's part of what A24 Studios is like. They do things off string budgets, and they get films made that usually can never get made. Now, personally, what I would have preferred seeing is not this as a movie, but I would have liked to have seen this as a 4 or 6 part TV series. That way, you could have given more time to individual situations than a movie. But that's a whole different.
There's a lot of wrestlers. Michael Hayes. There's a lot of wrestlers that want to put down who portrayed themselves. Brady Pierce is Michael Hayes. This person, I've never heard of him. And Aaron Dean Eisenberg. I think there was another actor by name Eisenberg.
You're thinking of Jesse Eisenberg.
Thank you. I thought that name sounded so familiar as Ric Flair, and everybody slams his portrayal of Ric Flair. Now you want to about what your portrayal.
The only part of Ric Flair that I actually thought was okay was when he still had the glasses on, because then you could somewhat see the look. But he didn't have the attitude or anything else. Once you took the glasses off, it was like a mask came off, and it's like, no, this ain't him.
You also said Jim Cornette, or you also agreed that it looks like he's taking his portrayal, his actor's taking his portrayal, Ric Flair, off of the Young Rock series, NBC series.
No, it wasn't Cornette. It was the other guy it was the guy who was interviewing.
Right,
saying,
the other host.
Yeah, he was saying that basically it was like a portrayal of the guy from that, and then Cornette's counter was saying it's like someone who took 3 different YouTube videos, put them together, and thinking, okay, that's who this person's supposed to be.
When Ric Flair entered into the dressing room, they all calm down and they stop their character and they will say, okay, we did a great job, a good wrestling match. That does seem like Ric Flair would. A lot of wrestlers would say, okay, great job, kid. It did seem like Ric Flair, but here's when I said there was only one moment he said to woo, that he's the famous trademark quote by Ric Flair done a million times, and
that exact word is exactly why I don't think it was in the film, because I think it's trademarked and therefore you have to pay for it.
Now here's my complaint about the woo problem. Ric Flair has repeatedly said he took the woo from listening in the early 70s, listening to Jerry Lee Lewis on the radio driving through a car. Yeah. You did get it from Jerry Lee Lewis. He said he got it from Great Balls of Fire. It was not Great Balls of Fire because I love Jerry Lee Lewis's music. He got it from Breathless. There is a particular time in the lyrics that you hear him say woo. Woo is never in Great Balls of Fire. But the other problem was, if it's trademarked, I don't think Jerry Lee Lewis. He would have made a ton of money off Ric Flair alone. How many times Ric Flair has said woo? You're talking in the billions of times. But how many promos over the years?
That was the aspect of that era not being smart enough to have copyrights on their stuff. So most didn't do it, and that's why they lost a lot of money.
Now, the portrayal Fritz, his obsession with his family getting the NWA World Championship. There's a lot of things I thought were missed for this went for some 2 hours. I thought it was an hour and a half movie.
Well, it wasn't. It was definitely 2 hours, but based on the time we were watching.
There's a lot of things missed, and one of the key things I think, if they attempted to portray this almost in a shoot point of view that Jim Cornette saw, then that Fritz wanted he himself couldn't obtain win the NWA World Title, get a shot at it. He wanted his sons to get a shot at it. Well, if they want to portray in a shoot value, then they should have shown a National Wrestling Alliance meeting of the promoters of who would be the next world champion. There are so many things that I wrote down that were missed in this film.
What I would have liked in that kind of scenario, and this is where I guess movie-wise it's more boring to talk about the business aspect, was the motivation about wanting family to have that title is, okay, now my promotion, me and my family is going to be taking this seriously, that we're going to be the ones that make the kind of money that other people have had. Like, remember, you're still dealing with the territorial wars in that time, so what Fritz is probably thinking is, okay, Vince is now making a whole ton of money off of Hulk Hogan. NWA and WCW were making a whole ton of money off of Ric Flair. If this title goes to my family, can I start making this kind of money? And I would have liked to had more of that in the movie. The only time they even hinted at the movie was at the beginning of the, making money when it was more in their prime, and then some kind of like cliche were you stealing money off the books, which in real life I've never heard of regarding World Class. There's other promotions have had that problem, but I have not heard that issue with World Class. And I would have liked a little bit more time on that to know if that's what really was his problem.
The key error I have in so many shoot interviews that I've listened to, that wrestlers have said about working in the World Class and with the Von Erich boys, if these wrestlers began to get over and get very popular with the fans, Fritz put a stop to it, and either you're going to work with the other guy, you're going to work my boys. If you think you're going to be more popular than my sons, you got another thing coming. He said, I'll put you tag team champions. I'll have you work with other wrestlers, other titles, but you're not getting over my boys. Holy cow! How many wrestlers said if you got over his sons, over the Von Erich boys, you're on your way out? And when Dingo Warrior, who became the Ultimate Warrior, that is a key thing. He so many people got over. And that's where Jim Hellwig, when he started Dingo Warrior, he hit the WWF because he got popular. And a lot of wrestlers said, yes, World Class was a major success because only of the Von Erich boys. But if you got past the Von Erich boys and the fans, wow, we like him just as much. Fritz was not going to stand for that. You're either going to be tag team champions, other champions, work with other wrestlers, but you're not getting over my boys. There was the biggest downfall, let alone the loss of each son. That's also a major downfall. Wrestlers could not tolerate this crap.
Because it affected how many wrestlers would actually want to join your promotion and how long they would stay there if they knew you would actually, or not going to keep them that long if they ever got popular. So I understood them losing higher quality talent as the years gone on, and eventually it faded away.
There's a lot of, in 2 hours, there's a lot, give another half an hour. I think one of the key major scenes, I think, during when we were watching the movie, and my brother and I did not agree with this one, they show Kerry driving his motorcycle. The next thing you know, you see him on crutches, listing a foot. They should have shown the motorcycle accident. Because today, I said, nobody today, other than old school, would remember the Von Erich territory, the Von Erich boys. Nobody would know what the heck happened. He was driving a motorcycle. Next thing, he's on crutches without a foot. What happened? Today, 2023, 2024, nobody would have no idea.
I don't think...
about the missing of the foot?
I don't even think they needed to show the accident. I think what they needed to have was a scene in a hospital setting that clearly indicated that after the accident, he got messed up this badly and he was hurt. And I think just showing something like that would have been cheaper than showing a crash.
Like in a hospital, hospital scene.
Something that would have just indicated the severity of the situation.
Because I haven't read in detail in the wrestling magazines what had happened. Even the wrestlers are not 100% sure about what happened. Something about he sideswiped either from behind or from the side of the car he hit, and his leg got really badly injured. Badly. That's why he lost the foot.
And plus, I would have liked more detail on how well he kept that quiet.
Yes.
So nobody knew about it for as long as they did.
Because once he hit the WWF, there were so many scenes in the movie he was trying to get a wrestle on that foot and put a prosthetic on in the WWF. nobody knew about the nobody knew. Some did, some didn't.
And
How he did it was incredible.
And the reason why this has to be highlighted is because earlier in the movie they were showing David Von Erich getting sick before his trip to Japan.
We don't know if that it started in the United States or Japan.
So my point is that they're trying to indicate, okay, well, if I warned somebody about David, he might have been still alive. Well, you could have done the same thing with Carrie if you warned people about the foot that maybe he could have been still alive, but it's sort of like they didn't go far enough to indicate that he was basically blaming himself and then later blaming his father for everything that ended up happening. But there wasn't that connection.
I was vaguely thinking of showing a scene in the Japan where it's storied by I know that Bruiser Brody was there, discovered David Von Erich's body in Japan. I wish it was David Manning who did the interview I listened to, or somebody else, but when they found it, they found apparently some kind of prescription medicines or some not prescription medicines, and they dumped it down the toilet, and they wanted a story that it was intestines ruptured. So it was the person who did the interview said Bruiser Brody was definitely he and his Bruiser Brody and this other guy found David, but they found bottles on the dresser. They dumped it down the toilet because they said we're only going to go by the story of keeping it clean, that something in his body gave in, and that's why he died. That's according to the story. I don't know whether that would have just added to the tragedy of David, to add on the truth of really what happened.
I think it was the issue of trying to verify any of that, so they realized, okay, let's just not include it and just include the only thing we knew for certain.
Another thing is that there's so many things that should have been added on. One key thing I definitely know, at a shadow of a doubt, should have been added on with a few seconds that the movie had of NWA, since WWF owns NWA, the world class material, the videos. Because I know Kevin Mark sold the tape library to McMahon. That they had a few seconds of watching Stark '83. They had a few seconds of watching the Parade of Champions. When Kerry pins Ric Flair at Texas Stadium, the boys jumped off on the video. You see that all of a sudden the brothers are jumping all over in celebration. What they should have had, and they vaguely had it with I think it was the mother Doris watching it on TV, and he knew it was supposed to have been David that should have got that shot, and it was such a vague. She didn't celebrate. She know that because it should have been David that got that shot, and they had to give it to Kerry. In the tunnel of Texas Stadium, the Dallas Cowboys that would lead it to the dressing rooms, the boys. What I would have had the boys. They had the actual audio of the announcer portray the back as Kerry backslides Ric Flair into the pinfall position, and 1, 2, 3, my dream come true. Have the audio overlay and the boys run out slow motion to the ring, jumping all over brother. That's what was seen in all videos that show the Kerry Von Erich defeating Ric Flair. They should have had the boys run out, the brothers run out of the tunnel to the ring and celebrate with their brother. That definitely should have been in the movie.
I think one of the obvious reasons they didn't do it was then you have to fill up.
I know.
Extras.
Some kind of a stadium.
That was simply money they were never going to be able to get to.
I know.
And Cornette did note about it. That was why he noted that you did the scenes in the other arena fine, but you couldn't build a 5,000 stadium, so you certainly weren't going to build up tens of thousands for the win. So I understood that more to a degree. I am curious why you didn't do the actual audio on all this, and again, that could be a trademark issue. I wish somebody would actually, if somebody could just label down was a lot of things that weren't included because they had trademarks and they couldn't do it, that would be great.
There was a vagueness. It seems like Kerry was sniffing cocaine on a plate. There was vagueness of Kerry, but it's been so many wrestlers saying that his drug usage was not seen, but his demeanor was definitely, whether it's he would fall asleep in a car. He was in a dressing room. He couldn't. He laced his boots. Together. Yeah. He was such in a horrible state that he was no conditioned wrestler. So the other wrestler, Ric Flair, went to practically carry him. But there was one vague moment for 2 seconds. You see Kerry doing some kind of drug usage. One other thing I think could have been added on. They showed the Freebirds once or twice in the ring. I didn't like Terry. I didn't like Michael Hayes, the actor, had portrayed him. I think they got spot on with Michael Hayes. How they dressed up these wrestlers, for the most part, did look pretty good. Yeah. Terry Gordy was, again, I think he was a very big guy. Not tall, but big guy.
Yeah.
And he kind of looked off on me. I don't know. Terry Gordy had a beard. It seemed he had a beard.
He did. Terry. I mean, the guy in the movie didn't have a beard, but the guy did look like he was anywhere from like 30, 40, maybe 40 pounds and a couple inches shorter than the real life Terry Gordy.
Not as much, and not just in weight wise, but Gary Gordy was pretty big, and he didn't 100% look like Gary Gordy. They were trying to portray it, but Michael Hayes, I think, was close to spot on. He didn't talk. He was no talking, but it was spot on. Freebirds was close to spot on. Although I'm not a fan of Buddy Roberts. Now the thing I think that definitely should have added on the key moment in Freebird Von Arch history is like it would happen in Dallas Sportatorium. Is the moment that Terry Gordy slammed the cage door on Kerry Von Erich's head in the match with Ric Flair, that the cage door slamming echoed through the whole arena. It was pretty hard. Now, question whether what I would have done is make a shoot moment that when the Von Erichs get back to the dressing room, the Freebirds get back to the dressing room, and Kerry and they'll yell at Terry Gordy, "What the heck was that?" and slam a cage door on my head like that. But we want to be a shoot.
How long ago was that before the title?
It was 82. Christmas 82 that it happened.
So that incident was 82. Yeah, they probably should have shown that first, because that would have indicated. And this is where I get.
This is the moment the feud started.
This is where I get back to the whole money and realistic aspect, because you could have shown a moment that you just described, right, and then you could have said, "Okay, we're getting more money now." And now this is where Flair and Harley Race are, okay, we're now going to want to include you guys in the NWA title scene, because we can now see you guys, your family, your promotion. You're bringing in enough money now that it's now warranted.
Yeah, I just
would
have made
like it would have shown the connection.
I just would have made it. I would made it more of a shoot moment that the Freebirds, that the Von Erichs get mad. Why'd you hit that cage door on me so hard? Is it because we want to make it look real? That's the reason why I think it would, because that slamming of the cage door in his head echoed through the whole arena. It was so powerful and loud. And the Freebirds would have made it look real.
And the only time they even highlighted at a wrestler trying to make it look more real than it was a moment with Harley Race. So I agree. Instead of doing that with Harley Race, you should have made that moment involving the Freebirds.
And the actor who portrayed Harley Race, most of these guys were spot on. So their portrayals were spot on.
Yeah, so that's where we have some disagreement with Cornette. He thought nobody looked like him. We only thought a couple did.
The two things he kept saying is the things they were saying they never would have said. And wrestlers, like I said before, they're so original, it's difficult to get an actor to portray them at 100% level. They could come close, maybe 60 to 80% close. But wrestlers their characters themselves are so original. Who could re-portray them? That's what Cornette would argue.
Yeah, I think Cornette was right when he had said that basically the actors were sounding like how fans think wrestlers would sound like, and that's not the case. And I admit, I am kind of curious as why, when you had a couple wrestlers who were in the business, why didn't they consult on that aspect of it? They were fine when it came to consulting the wrestling moves, but not the actual choreography.
I give credit. Tribal Guerrero did a wonderful job of training everybody.
And that was about
he's been a choreographer, trainer in many wrestling movies.
And that's about the only person that I think Cornette ended up praising in that whole movie was Chavo.
And he portrayed the original Sheik. The original Sheik. But I think overall, I would give the movie a 3.5, meaning I could watch it again. It's just a lot of things were missing. I'd
probably give it a 2.5 out of 5, where I think it was watchable, and I think it's good to give insight on it. So I do agree with that. But I also do agree with why Cornette had disagreements with it, in that when you know the actual stories and you realize a lot of things don't mesh up with the reality of it, it does take away from wanting to see it a second time.
But again, no fans today, most people don't care about the past. I do, but old school fans, we would be picking at it of what we remember of the Von Erichs, whether it's video or we saw them in person, or from Pennsylvania, not from Texas. We had to see them on video on YouTube. The first video that I saw among the first videos that I saw was, it was called Von Erich's Ringside, something like that. And the one thing also they did attempt to re-portray was the moment that of who was going to face Ric Flair at Texas Stadium, Kevin or Kevin. Now, allegedly, there was a coin toss. Now, the thing is, in the movie they portrayed, they were sitting on a porch, and it was nighttime. I know in the video it was daytime, and it was Fritz deciding, Kerry, you're going to take it. And Kevin said, no, I can try it. No, it was neither boys. From what I remember in the video, Fritz said, Kerry, you're going to take the shot. And there was no argument over it. But the movie was trying to turn it was nightfall.
And I still have an issue with them arguing, okay, there's no way they let Fritz decide who's going to be the next NWA champion. The NWA, whoever their committee is, they would have had this final to say. I can't imagine they would give somebody else the final say.
There were so many wrestlers, Ric Flair, there's so many guys of, was it true that David Von Erich had the title shot in Texas?
Oh, no, I don't mean that. I mean, who would have said, okay, we're going to make the call, you're going to be the next champion. I can't imagine they're going to give Fritz that kind of power. Ric
Flair has totally gone with the premonition, that, or lack of a better word, that this whole situation was in memory of David. Without a doubt. They gave the Von Erich family the title because of David died. And everybody said that David was the better wrestler, and he was no doubt eventually. Now, many of the better Harley Race or Ric Flair, so many wrestlers that knew the Von Erichs was David either promised or was he going to be groomed the next world champion? Some would say yes. Some would say, no, I never heard about that. It's a mix. If you so many shoot interviews, it's a mix of, was it true David was going to get the title shot?
Now, before we end up concluding this thing, here's going to be the interesting question. If you had another chance for a movie or a show based on a wrestler, let's assuming retired so they don't burn anybody in the business, who actually would you want it to be? Because I think you and I are going to have completely two different people in mind. Like, what wrestler would you prefer having this kind of a movie about their life, all of it, or a show so they can more detail it? Would you have, if not the Von Erichs, who?
Flair or McMahon.
My thought would
Ric Flair or Vince McMahon for a biography.
See, my thought would still be no, because they're both technically still involved, and that's a whole different story. I'm thinking of, okay, someone who is definitely retired, officially gone from the business in every aspect. Who would it be?
You tell me. What do you think?
Honestly, I'm thinking Sting. Because he has three different perspectives. One, he could describe the rise and fall of WCW and NWA falling apart.
True.
He could describe being in multiple independent groups that got big and faded away. He could describe a horrible experience with WWE. And he could conclude on what's his aspect now that Vince is no longer at WWE.
I'd love to see the reportrayal, because Ric Flair's talked about the reportrayal of, and this is going way off the Von Erich review, but I would love to see Ric Flair's portrayal of the Jim Herd situation.
My only problem with wanting Flair is I'm not sure I would ever get this.
How would anybody do a good Ric Flair?
No, I don't know how honest I could get Flair to be, and that's my problem. Would you believe the narrator?
They should have had a narrator in this film.
No, I mean, would you believe Ric Flair to tell the truth about his whole business?
I don't. Now, I think Kevin Von Erich should have been involved, consulted, and been a narrator. I think he should have been a narrator.
And that ultimately is probably
like a Morgan Freeman or Tom Hanks. I think he should have been, like in a sense, a Forrest Gump thing.
His lack of involvement probably is the biggest flaw of this film.
Oh, yes. And it's probably he himself said, I was never consulted. My son, they got a little bit.
It's probably why I would rate this 2.5 out of 5 instead of a 3.5. Because
there was just not enough.
You're removing authenticity by not having.
I think there was just not enough material for me. Not enough. They did an attempt, quote unquote, an attempt at these portrayals of the Von Erichs.
And it is an overall critique on when it comes to biographies in general, is that you try to focus too much on their whole life instead of just one particular moment in their life.
I did review this with my neighbor Jose, and when I said biopic, Now, one YouTube comment says this was not a biopic. I never said Kevin Costner did it as a director. I never said anything like that. Okay, you could say biopic. You could say biography. You could say biographical. You say based on a true story. Whatever. I think it's all the same phrases. It doesn't mean a 3-hour movie, but it's the same phrases.
I think in Hollywood or legal terms, it means what percentage is telling the truth. And I don't think this was based on a true story, because that was like 25 to 50% truth. I think this is probably inspired by a true story.
Okay.
Or maybe you got 10 to 25% of the truth, and the rest
you
of
would
it
so
was
you would
dramatized.
you would start the movie as inspired by true. What would you have subtitled?
Inspired by
True events.
Inspired by true events and true and real individuals.
Okay. I would go.
That's where I would say.
I think if the film had started, I'd call it based on a true story. But
because that just
wasn't not enough. The one key moment everybody attacks, let alone the Rick Flipper trail, was that in the spoiler, the ending, that when Kevin finds Carrie at the ending, but he goes attack his father, that the father did not put him that care enough about his sons, caring about wrestling than his own sons' personal lives, that he blamed Fritz on all the cause. No,
that was part of the dramatization, where originally it was about Kevin blaming himself, then blaming his father for all that.
The ending was so. I think it was a very good ending.
The only cute pick, I think, was the very ending scene where you made it realize, okay, he does have a family. It didn't die. You have a lot of kids.
I did not know there was so many. That the sons had so many kids and there's so many grandkids.
Yeah,
wow, I didn't expand it that much.
It was a good touch moment.
Wow. Yeah, but you could only see, from my point of view, old school wrestling. It's not since I started in 1986. I first remember when Mike Weinreich was sick.
So I understood why this was what they called an Oscar bait type film, but it didn't. But I also understood. Let me finish. I also understood why it never got any nominations, except
there were a few. Mickey B says it's got a few. But not the majors.
The one thing I think it did win for was National Board of Review.
Yeah, there were a few awards and nominations. There were a few.
But I understood why it was not actually going to get anything.
But only us old school fans are the ones that could review it, critique it, and, lack of a better word, not enjoy. What word am I looking for?
Appreciate.
Appreciate. Thank you. So that's a word that's not. It's difficult for me to say. Appreciate it because it's based on wrestlers. It's based on real people, whether it's rather than a fictional situation. So, yes, only old school wrestling fans could appreciate them creating this. It's just not. It was not enough material for me to get to. I like things to be on par, to be as perfect as possible, but it's not that easy because this is based on a tragic family.
So in finale, in my personal opinion, I do think it's a movie that's worth a watch, but I do understand if it's not something you think you'll watch more than just one time. Could I watch it more times? I gave it 3.5, meaning I could watch it more than once, maybe just to review it, not to enjoy it. Yeah.
Only to review it. Okay, so that was our review from both of us growing up as old school wrestling fans. So I had to cover this. Again, only old school wrestling fans could appreciate this.
And it's understandable.
So thank you for listening. This was the Double Demon Review.